You know, sometimes history turns on a dime. One single event, one strike, one death, and suddenly the future of an entire region, maybe even the world, is completely up for grabs. So let's get right into what happened.
Here's the headline that changed everything. On February 28, 2026, after almost 37 years as the most powerful man in Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was assassinated. It was a joint U.S.-Israeli military operation, and it instantly threw the Middle East into a terrifying new crisis.
And to give you a sense of how high the stakes were, this was the backdrop. Tensions were already through the roof, and right after the strike, then-President Donald Trump dropped this message on Truth Social. It was a stark warning that set the stage for really violent escalation.
So, how did this all go down? Let's unpack the operation itself, a mission that struck right at the heart of the Iranian regime.
That day, wow, it just unfolded with breathtaking speed. It all kicked off in the morning with this massive joint air assault codenamed Operation Epic Fury. For hours, it was just chaos and confusion. You had Iranian officials on TV insisting Khamenei was perfectly fine, safe and sound. But by the afternoon, U.S. and Israeli sources started saying, no, we've found his body in the wreckage. And then by evening, the denial was over. Iranian state media made the official, absolutely stunning announcement. The Supreme Leader was dead.
And this wasn't just some abstract political hit. This was deeply, tragically personal. According to Iran's own Fars news agency, the strike didn't just kill him, it also killed members of his immediate family who were in the compound with him, a daughter-in-law, a son-in-law, and even a grandchild.
The blowback was almost immediate. You can probably guess what happened next. With their leader gone, Iran and its proxies unleashed this wave of retaliatory strikes that basically set the entire region on fire.
Within just a few hours, missiles were being intercepted over Doha, the capital of Qatar, which, hosts a huge U.S. military base.
And it didn't stop there. The big financial and travel hubs of the Gulf were next. Suddenly, explosions were being reported across Dubai in the UAE and Manama in Bahrain. The sense of security in these global cities was just shattered.
The attacks hit things that would really hurt. Dubai International Airport, one of the busiest in the world, actually took damage. It forced this panicked evacuation and basically brought a huge chunk of global travel to a screeching halt.
And then came the direct military showdown. Iran started targeting U.S. bases in Iraq and all throughout the Gulf. This was a clear signal of a new, direct conflict with American forces.
Amid all the chaos of military targets and infrastructure, there's this one number that just stops you cold. 148. That's the reported death toll from a single airstrike on the Shajareh Tayyibeh Elementary School for Girls in the city of Minab.
So while Iran was lashing out at its enemies, a whole other crisis was brewing inside its own borders. The assassination didn't just create a power vacuum, it ripped the country apart, exposing these really deep divisions.
I mean, it's the single most important question, right? After decades of absolute rule by one man, Khamenei is gone. So, who's actually running the country?
Well, on paper, there's a plan for this. A kind of constitutional emergency brake is supposed to kick in. A temporary three-person council takes over, and here they are. The president, Masoud Pezeshkian, the chief justice, Ghulam Hossein Mohseni Ejei, and they're joined by one jurist from the super-powerful Guardian Council. Their job is to keep the state from falling apart until a new supreme leader can be chosen.
But what was happening on paper was one thing. What was happening on the streets, a completely different story. And the contrast here is just fascinating. Videos started flooding social media, showing people openly celebrating in cities like Tehran and Isfahan. But at the exact same time, in conservative strongholds like Mashhad, you had supporters literally collapsing in grief, wailing in the streets. A nation just profoundly and publicly divided.
So, this brings us to the big what if. What happens next? The Council on Foreign Relations has really analyzed this power struggle and has laid out 3 potential paths forward for Iran. Let's walk through them.
Okay, so scenario 1 is basically business as usual, or as close as they can get. They call it managed continuity. The system just tries to preserve itself by appointing another cleric. Scenario 2 is a much harder turn. A military shift, where the incredibly powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, basically takes over and runs the country as a military state. And then there's the third one, the most chaotic possibility, regime collapse, where all of the infighting and unrest just causes the state to splinter and fall apart.
And you've got this whole cast of characters all vying for power.
Within the establishment, you have big names like Ali Larijani, who was reportedly anointed by Khamenei himself as a successor. And of course, there's Mojtaba Khamenei, the late leader's own son, who has deep ties to the IRGC. But then, you also have major players outside the country, like Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of the last Shah. He's a huge figure for the opposition and declared the end of the Islamic Republic as soon as the news broke.
Now, this isn't just a crisis for Iran. The fallout from this one assassination has absolutely massive implications for the entire world.
So, let's just boil it all down. What's the bottom line here? Well, first, the risk of a wider, direct war in the Middle East is higher than it has been in decades, period. Second, the global economy is facing huge uncertainty, especially with threats to those vital shipping lanes. For the United States, this is a massive foreign policy test for its alliances. A total state collapse could trigger a refugee crisis on a scale we haven't seen. And maybe the biggest wildcard of all, the future of Iran's nuclear program is now a terrifyingly open question.
So, Iran is now standing at a historic crossroads, a real fork in the road. Will it be more of the same, a shift to military rule, or just collapse? The path it chooses isn't just going to define its own future, it could very well reshape all of ours.